Hey guys, what is going on? It is Brooke, or the Undead DM, and I'm back at it again with another video for you today. And in this episode of Homebrew Review, we're going to be going over the Sculptor class by Ross Leiser. Now, in previous entries of Homebrew Review, particularly with the Shaman class, I have shown that I do not particularly care for a lot of Ross Leiser's homebrew, as he has shown that either he makes his homebrew a little too underpowered or too overpowered. There doesn't really seem to be a very good middle ground. But what really got me onto his work was this one, was the Sculptor. This was actually the first homebrew I ever bought by Ross Leiser, because it seemed interesting at the time, but going back and reading it now, it's definitely not as good as I thought it was. So without further ado, leave a like, comment what you want to see next, and let's get right into it. So the lore of the Sculptor is that it is a half-caster, and it doesn't use weapons in the traditional sense. It uses mana in a way to sculpt weapons, and each subclass is based on what weapon you manifest. So if we look here, we'll see that yes, it is a half-caster. It has spells known, meaning that it is a non-preparation based spellcaster. Kind of a sad moment. We'll also notice here that it has a D10 hit die, and it has proficiency with all armor, but no weapons or tools. That may seem bad, and it is, but we'll get into that. It also has proficiency in the dex and intelligence saves, pretty standard. And you get 2 from these skills: Arcana, History, Medicine, Nature, Perception, and Sleight of Hand. You also get your starting equipment, but nobody cares about starting equipment. Unless you do, then go ahead and pause the video and read up here. But we're going to move on to the level 1 ability, Mana Shaper. So, you can spend 1 minute sculpting mana into a set of artisan's tools or a simple object that is no larger than medium. Or you can use an action to sculpt it into any simple weapon or your shape weapon. We'll get into that. You are considered proficient with any toolkit or weapon made with your mana, and you're also your mana can also be sculpted into a single toolkit, object, or weapon at a time. So you can't have, say, a set of glass blowers tools and a dagger made out of your mana. You have to pick one or the other, which does kind of suck. If it was you can only have one tool, one object, and one weapon each, I think that'd be a little bit better, because it is just a level 1 ability. And you also, remember, don't get proficiency with weapons, so it's a little bit weird that it has to be so restrictive. Also, beginning at 11th level, when you spend 1 minute shaping your mana into an object, it could be large or smaller, and at 20th level, it could be huge or smaller. So the problem with this ability is that your class doesn't get proficiency in armor, or it doesn't get proficiency in weapons, or tools. So restricting you to only using one type of tool and one type of weapon at a time means that in combat scenarios, you're going to be restricted to one weapon, and that weapon you can only shape one. You can't even shape your shape weapon and an additional weapon. This is just one weapon all the time. So if you are stuck with a melee weapon and all of your enemies are at range, you're just screwed because you get no proficiency in weapons. So you can't even use the tactic of I'll just use javelins or spears and huck them at my opponents because I have proficiency in simple weapons. You don't have that option. Definitely the first change I would make is at least give them proficiency in simple weapons and at least one tool of their choice. And then allow Mana Shaper to give them at least one of each of the options, and they could dismiss any or all of them as for no action required. Then it may be a little bit better. This way you could circumvent the weakness of the melee classes or the ranged classes by not being screwed over. Battle Sculpt. This is basically your subclass. All of them are going to be named Shape of something, and it's usually going to be the name of the weapon. You also get the fighting styles. I will give Ross Leiser one thing. I believe this was released during the same time that the Unearthed Arcana with the new fighting styles like close quarter shooting, mobile fighting, and the Mariner fighting styles were out. So I will give him credit that he did add the close quarters fighting and the mobile fighting. Those are pretty nice, but he didn't really change anything else. Mana Source. So the Mana Source ability, you basically get to choose what spell list you pick from. So you either pick Abyssal for Warlock, Arcane for Sorcerer, Divine for Paladin, Nature for Ranger, or Elemental for the Elementalist class that Ross Leiser also made. So now, one thing that's very strange to me is that out of all these classes, Sorcerer is the only full caster here. Yes, Warlock is considered technically a full caster because it does have access to higher level spells, but it's really more of a half caster in my eyes since you only get one use of the higher level spells, meanwhile other spellcasters get at least two. So it seemed more of a half caster to me. But in this sense, I don't know why you would never not pick Ranger since Ranger has the best spell list in the entire game. Next to Druid and the Wizard. I have no clue why you wouldn't pick Ranger. Paladin's spell list is just not versatile enough. Warlock is pretty okay. So is Sorcerer. Sorcerer's is actually pretty good. And the Elementalist class, I'll cover the Elementalist class in another video, but its spell list is essentially just any spell you can think of that does elemental damage. It has it. It's not very good. Spellcasting, we already went over this. You get spells known. You can also change the spells whenever you level up, and your spellcasting ability is intelligence. Now, one thing I neglected to tell you prior to this is that its recommendation, its quick build here, says that you should either choose strength or dex depending on your subclass. And then concentrate on. So, see, it says here first make either strength or dex your highest ability score depending on your chosen battle sculpt. So, for the bow, the twin blades, make dex your highest, then on strength, and then on intelligence and con. So, here's the problem here. This is a 4 ability score reliant class. Now, 3 ability score reliants aren't that bad. They're doable if you use your class's ASIs properly, your races improvements properly, and you either roll pretty good or you use point buy in an effective manner, and you choose the correct feats. Then this is kind of a 3 ability score reliant class. Is not really that much of a demanding task, but 4 is a bit much. So I'd say just focus on 1, either strength or dex, and then make intelligence and con. But based on this, it seems it's a little weird that it's an intelligence-based caster, and why it's not, let's say, one of the first strength-based spellcasting classes, since it is primarily martial, and it doesn't really have a unique spell list to its own. It just takes the spell list from other classes. But it is intelligence. You also get so you get spellcasting at 2nd level, you get your fighting style at 2nd level, and you get your mana shaper and your battle sculpt ability at 1st level. You also get your mana source at 2nd level. So you get 3 abilities at 2nd level and 2 abilities at 1st level. At 3rd level, you get battle ready, where as a reaction or when you roll initiative or as a bonus action on your turn, you can sculpt your mana into your shape weapon. Now, mind you, Mana Shaper says that you have to use an action to sculpt your mana into either a simple weapon or your shape weapon. You have to wait 2 additional levels just to get the ability to have your weapon prior to combat. Now, sure, it doesn't state how long that the shape weapon lasts for, so you can easily do this before combat. But the fact that if you get screwed over and you're trying to do roleplay things, and you get ambushed by your dungeon master, and now you have to waste your reaction on your first turn just to use your shape, It does kind of suck. I don't know why you can't just do this normally. Same with Expert Craftsman. You get expertise. Pardon me. You get expertise with any ability check you make with any tools that you craft using your mana sculpt. Again, don't know why this isn't like a first level ability. I would have just combined Battle Ready and Expert Craftsman into like a first level ability. Ability score improvement, pretty standard. It only gets one extra attack, that's a bit sad. But also, at 6th level, you get mana potency. So, the weapons that you craft using your mana sculpt are now considered magical. Okay, it's pretty on par for magic weapons or magical based abilities at this point. Same with the monk with their key infused fists. Then you get Artisan's Intuition. This ability is very strange to me in the way that it's worded because it doesn't even really need to exist. So it says here, you add your proficiency bonus to investigation and perception checks you make, as well as your passive perception and investigation, even if you are already proficient in the skill. This entire ability doesn't need to be this wordy. It can literally just say, you gain expertise in investigation and perception checks. That's it. Because I don't think Ross Leiser understands that passive perception and passive investigation is 10 plus whatever the skill is. So your passive stealth check, if you're a rogue and you have plus 14, is 10 plus 14 because it counts for proficiency and expertise at the same time. He doesn't need to add that little ending. He doesn't even really need to make it as wordy as it does. It could be 2 sentences like extra attack. It doesn't need all this. This just needs to be trimmed down. And also, it's a little strange that we get expert craftsman at 3rd level. We have to wait all the way to 7th just to get this. Sucks. Definitely move this down. Mana Artist. When you sculpt your mana into your weapon, you can choose either acid, cold, fire, lightning, necrotic, or radiant damage. And if you do, the weapon now deals that damage instead of its normal damage until you dismiss it or sculpt your mana into something else. So I will give them this. It is an option. It does say you can choose, but why doesn't it just do additional damage instead of changing the damage? Like, sure, if you're fighting a red dragon, adding an additional d6 acid damage, probably not going to help much, but neither is just changing your weapon's damage to just acid. Now, if he has anything else that is just resistant to acid damage, you're just screwed. Because now you have to waste your entire next action to uncraft and recraft your weapon and choose a different damage type. So you just wasted your 2 attacks right there. Unless you use Battle Ready, where you have to use your bonus action. Meaning you don't get any bonus action spells. So, once again, you're kind of losing out. I will give him this. It is optional, but it'd be better if it just added damage instead of just changing the damage type. Artisan's Eye. As a bonus action, focus on one creature within 30 feet of you, and while you're focused on them, they cannot become hidden from you except by magical means, meaning they can't take the hide action, but they can go invisible. Any attack you make against them, it has a critical hit of 19 or 20 instead of just 20, and you have advantage on investigation, nature, and insight checks you make involving them. So it's basically just a worse Hexblade's Curse, but way later. And you lose focus if they are more than 60 feet from you. You lose line of sight. You use this feature on a different target, or you lose concentration. As far as I'm aware, the Hexblade's Curse doesn't require concentration. And if it does, I'll eat my words on that one. But if last time I checked, I don't think Hexblade's Curse requires you to have line of sight. So basically, this creature, yeah, he can't hide from you now, but he can't hide from you except by magical means. Meaning, if he has the ability to just go invisible, you just lose this ability. Okay, cool, but that's just wasting your bonus action, and that's it. And the only real benefit you get is critting on a 19 to 20, which is horrible. If it added some kind of additional damage on the thing, it would be still not that good, but it would at least be something. Master Sculptor. You basically just get to cast the spiritual weapon spell at 6th level without expending a spell slot, and it takes the form of your shape weapon, and you may make it do acid, cold, fire, lightning, necrotic, or radiant damage instead of force, once per long rest. There is an entire video by Pack Tactics talking about spiritual weapon being a bad spell. There's a reason for it. And if you want to check out the reasoning why having a bad spell as a bad 18th level ability once is bad, I will leave his video in the description below. So please check that out. And finally, level 20 Mana Armory. As an action, so once again you're giving up your 2 attacks, you can give any number of creatures within 30 feet of you your shape weapon for 1 minute. And it gains your battle sculpt's 1st, 6th, and 11th level features as long as they are wielding it. And for each shape weapon, you can choose acid, cold, fire, lightning, necrotic, or radiant damage, and have each one do a different damage type instead of its normal damage, once per long rest. Overall, I think this class is very weak when it comes to being a martial, and very not focused when it comes to being a half-caster, because it's just taking spells from other classes. It doesn't do anything that martials can't already do, and it can't do anything that half-casters can't already do. It has poor action economy. It has poor distribution of power abilities. It has a weird sense of scaling the abilities, because gotta remember, past level 10, that's basically endgame, and all you get is worse Hexblade's Curse. When Hexblades get that at 6th level, they get that a whole 8 levels earlier than you. So for 8 levels, Hexblades are going to be dealing more damage and being overall more useful martial characters than you. That's sad. Yeah, they have to waste an invocation to get extra attack, but they also get Eldritch Smite. You don't get Eldritch Smite. All you get is the Paladin spell list, and that's it. And you can't even multi-class this into a Paladin to get the Divine Smite better, because your spellcasting ability is Intelligence. If it was Charisma, sure, but it doesn't make any sense. And since we're right there at 25 subscribers, or coming close to it, I'm going to give you guys a little treat. So, in this video, we're also going to be going over the first subclass. So, the first subclass is the Shape of the Axe. So, when you sculpt your mana into your weapon, it has the statistics of a battle axe, but its versatile damage die is increased to a d12 instead of a d10. And at first level, you also gain proficiency with shields. That's all you get at first level. You don't get anything unique to your axe other than a d12, which is an increase of 1 damage on average, and proficiency with shields. Cool. Who cares? You get a +2 bonus to AC. Awesome. Nobody cares. Especially since you have to wait 5 entire levels to get your next ability, where, when you make a melee attack using your shape weapon, you can choose to swing wildly. On a hit, you deal damage of the same type you dealt to the target to each creature of your choice within 5 feet of both you and the target. The damage is equal to your strength modifier. And when you swing wildly, the first attack made before the start of your next turn is made with advantage. So basically, this is I hit the boss, and if there's anybody around me or him specifically, I hit them all. But a very interesting wording of this is that it says any creature within 5 feet of both you and the target. Meaning if you're surrounded and there's also a person in front of you, but you have a 10-foot reach and you can hit the boss. You can hit the boss and hit all 8 other creatures around you without really trying, which is interesting, but it's not very good. Especially since it's only equal to your strength modifier and not your strength score. Which, I mean, for 6th level, who cares? Your strength score is most likely going to be 18. You're probably going to be dealing more damage than that with your weapon attacks anyway at this point. So why not? I mean, wizards are casting fireballs that deal more damage than that. Granted, it is to every creature, but fireball is dealing on average like 28 points of damage to each creature. So they're going to outdamage you either way. Just let them deal an additional 18 damage to each creature. Nobody's going to blink an eye. Also, when you swing wildly, the first attack made against you, so it's only the first attack. It's basically less powerful reckless attack. But it's still there, I guess. At 11th level, you also get Sharpened Focus. You add your Intelligence modifier to the damage of your melee weapon using your shape weapon, as well as to the damage from your Barbaric Cleave. So now, on top of adding your Strength modifier, you add your Intelligence modifier. Again, I don't know why this isn't Strength score and then Intelligence mod, then that would be more understanding. But, oh well. At least it's free. And it's only to the damage, it's not to hit. And mind you, since you don't have proficiency in weapons, your shape weapon can never have a bonus to it magically, which does suck. And finally, Critical Edge at 15th level. Whenever you use your Barbaric Cleave, the attack is a critical hit on a roll of a 19 or 20, and you can roll 1 additional die when determining the extra damage for a crit. And if you swing wildly against the target of your Artisan's Eye, that ability that's just worse Hexblade's Curse, the attack is instead a critical hit on an 18 to 20, and the additional roll of the die when determining the extra damage for a critical hit is also added to the damage of your Barbaric Cleave. So in total, for the shape of the axe, if you go through the trouble of using your bonus action to focus on the guy, get worse Hexblade's Curse, then have your axe out, manage to Barbaric Cleave them, you are now dealing, let's say you're wielding it in 2 hands, you're now dealing 1d12 plus your strength mod, so on average a plus 4. So 1d12 plus 4 plus your intelligence modifier, which if we're going based off of this class's instructions, would most likely be plus 3, so that's plus 7 in total. And you're dealing 7 damage to each creature within 5 feet of you and the boss. So you're dealing 7 damage to everyone around you, and you're dealing 1d12 plus 7 to the boss, and you crit 15% of the time. And if you do crit, you just get to roll 1 additional damage die. So that can possibly boost your damage up to 3d12 plus 7 for the boss, and then 1d12 plus 7 to everybody around you. That is terrible. Personally, I would give them some other things at first level. Make Barbaric Cleave, make it scale with Strength score, and maybe also make Sharpen Focus scale with Intelligence score. And then Critical Edge, just make it give them a guaranteed crit. And make it deal like triple damage. Because at that point, no character is going to reach this level. If your campaign has gone past this point, your wizard's dominating the game anyway. Your full caster like your druid's dominating the game anyway. Just give marshals something. Yes, I understand that it is a half caster, but with the spell list being as limited as they are, except for the sorcerer, you're not really getting all that much. There are certain spells that are really good, especially in the ranger category, but they're still worse than full casters. They're always going to be. But for having a class that is based around weaponry and having the weapons be terrible is not a good look. But with that being said, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching this episode of Homebrew Review. In the next episode, we are going to be covering the rest of the subclasses in the form of the shape of the bow, shape of the hammer, the shield, the trident, and the twin blades. And then after that, just leave a comment suggesting what I should cover next, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Latest.